I
the
lay
people who
stretched
gave
out
you
on the
life
small
are the same
sofa
ones
in
who
my
try to
newly
erase it.
rented
Before we dive
apartment
in,
on
I
the
want to know
east
where you're
side
watching
of
from. Have
Atlanta,
you ever had to
one
fight for your
hand
place?
holding a cup of tea that had gone cold an hour ago, the other resting on my forehead as if I could physically push away the weight of everything that had happened. My phone screen kept lighting up on the coffee table, a relentless strobe of notifications that made my stomach turn. Calls from Mom, Dad, even Blaine, my older brother. The same three names flashed over and over like some kind of punishment I hadn't agreed to serve, as if one more second of silence from me would make the phone explode from sheer desperation. 6 months. It had been 6 months since I walked out of that house. No arguments, no tears, not even the dramatic slam of a door that you see in movies. I had quietly packed a few clothes, my old laptop, and my finance notebook into a faded duffel bag, then stepped outside just as the sun dipped behind the buildings across the street. No one stopped me. No one asked where I was going. No one imagined I wouldn't come back. They were used to Odessa, the easygoing daughter, the reliable one, the one who always paid the utility bills when things got tight. I was the invisible fixer behind every financial mess in that family, the one who stepped in whenever Blaine lost another job or when Mom and Dad forgot their payment deadline on a new set of furniture they didn't need. I used to think I was strong, that doing all of that was right, that it was my duty. But now, sitting in this tiny apartment that was just big enough for me and the silence, I finally understood. For nearly 10 years, I had been keeping alive a system I never built. A system where I was the only one running while everyone else just existed. The phone vibrated again. I didn't need to look to know it was Mom. I could already hear the start of her message in my head. How could you do this to your family? Ending with something like, "If you still care about us, call back right now." I didn't pick up, didn't even reach for the phone. I just leaned my head back against the cushion, took a deep breath, and felt my chest grow a little lighter with every passing second. My name is Odessa King. I'm 28 years old, a financial analyst who earned a full scholarship to Georgia State University. I used to believe that if I just worked hard enough, stayed out of trouble, kept my head down, I would be recognized, that someone would see me, really see me. But the truth is, the more I did, the less I mattered, and the one time I stopped, just once, the phone lit up like a 5-alarm fire. Then there's Blaine, my brother, 32 years old. He dropped out of art school after 2 years, worked as a barista for 3 months, then as a delivery driver for 5, and then went unemployed again. But somehow, he was always the one with potential. The dreamer. The one Mom hugged when he failed and Dad defended like he was a war hero returning from battle. And me? The one who never left a trail of debt, never ruined a single plan, never asked for anything. I somehow ended up being labeled the ungrateful one. My father, Thorin King, used to be an automotive engineer. 58 now, with a bad back and a habit of watching car restoration videos instead of actually doing anything productive. My mother, Valeria King, was a nurse. 56, sharp-tongued when she wanted to be, soft only when it came to Blaine. If you're listening from somewhere far away, drop your city in the comments so I can see how far this has traveled. And please, stay with me until the end. I remember the day I left like it was yesterday. Mom was watching her favorite TV show, something about renovating houses on a budget, ironic considering she never budgeted a day in her life. Dad had his eyes glued to a car insurance spreadsheet he'd been reviewing for 3 weeks, and Blaine was stretched out on the couch with his gaming console, headphones on, completely disconnected from the world. No one noticed me walking past with my bag slung over my shoulder. No one asked why I wasn't dressed for work. Not a single, "Where are you going?" And now, after 6 months of silence, they were trying to reach me, like I was some lifeline they had tossed aside and suddenly wanted back. I glanced at the phone again, still buzzing. I didn't turn it off, I just let it ring. Every vibration felt like proof that I had finally broken free of the invisible rope that had bound me for a decade. And for the first time in my
My name
life,
is Renata
freedom
Martinez,
smelled
and this
like a
is the story of
quiet
how I learned that
Thursday
sometimes the
afternoon
people who
where
gave you
every
life are the same
sound belonged
ones who try
only
to
to
erase it.
me. I started working at 16, not to buy cute clothes or hang out at coffee shops like my friends, but because I knew that if I didn't take care of myself, no one else would. While my classmates were getting picked up by their parents after school, I was riding my bike 4 blocks down to Miller's Bakery to wipe tables and mop floors, then biking home in the dark. I used my first paycheck, $243, to buy a second-hand computer. It was the only thing that helped me keep up with my classwork when everyone else had the latest laptops. No one asked if I needed help. No one asked if I was sleeping enough or if I'd had dinner. But when Blaine needed a new laptop at 20 years old, despite having already dropped out of art school, Mom had no problem opening a credit card and buying him a brand new MacBook. "He needs it to restart his life," she'd said, as if restarting meant binge-watching design tutorials and never completing a single project. I was used to that upside-down logic. When I did something right, it was expected. When Blaine messed up, it was because he was trying. Blaine is 4 years older than me, but if you looked at how things played out in our home, you'd think I was the older sibling. He always had an excuse, and he always got understood. When he quit his bookstore job because the boss was too controlling, Mom instantly defended him. "No one can survive in a toxic environment," she'd said, as if the man had been running a sweatshop instead of a quiet bookstore in Decatur. When he misplaced the car Dad had just spent $800 fixing, the first thing Dad said was, "Accidents happen." Me? When I got a full ride to Georgia State University, the only response I got was, "Couldn't you pick a school closer to home? Blaine might need the car." When I got hired by one of the biggest investment consulting firms in the area, Mom's reaction was, "That's so far. How will we get to our doctor's appointments?" I honestly can't remember the last time they said they were proud of me. Maybe they never did. I used to think that if I just kept working hard, kept proving myself, they would eventually see me. But the more I did, the more I became just a walking wallet. When they wanted to repaint the house, "Could you help out a bit?" When Blaine wanted to sign up for an online art class, "Odessa, could you front it for now? We'll settle up later." At first, I thought it was just temporary money trouble. I agreed to help here and there, but here and there turned into everything: electric bills, appliance repairs, gas money for Dad's car. I sent the money regularly. No thank yous, just more requests. "This month's a bit tight. Can you add a little more?" I tried to stay quiet. I told myself I was helping, that family should stick together. But every time I came home after grinding through weeks of 60-hour work weeks, I would see Blaine lounging on the couch, feet propped on the coffee table, controller in hand. Mom would be in the kitchen making his favorite lasagna. Dad would be telling the same story about how my son won an art contest back in 5th grade. I'm not heartless. I used to care about the smallest things: birthdays, holidays, Sunday dinners. But the one thing I could no longer do was live a life where effort was invisible and failure was celebrated like a triumph. I remember one evening when I told Mom I was saving up to buy my own place. She casually said something I will never forget. "A girl buying a house on her own? Aren't you worried people will think no one wants to marry you?" I didn't answer, but that was the moment I knew. I would never earn their honest approval. Not because I wasn't good enough, but because in their eyes, Blaine would always come first. And me? I was just the backup plan when things fell apart. That truth, bitter as it was, made me stronger. 6 months ago, when I finally walked out, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I just left, like the only person in the family who realized that if I didn't save myself, I would forever be the one holding the balance in a world tilted to someone else's side. It started with a single message from Mom late one night while I was still at the office, staring at spreadsheets that blurred together after 12 hours of work. "Odessa, we just lost power. Your father forgot to pay this month's bill. Can you help? I'll pay you back tomorrow." I didn't think twice. I sent $260 that night, along with a text. "Next time, remind Dad to pay a bit earlier." Of course, I never saw a dime back. Then came the water bill, the gas stove repair, supplements for Dad's back pain. Each one came with a reason that sounded so reasonable it would have felt heartless to say no. At first, I thought, it's fine, I make decent money, I can spare a little. But that little help quickly became everything. They stopped asking. They started assigning. "This week, send Blaine $200. He's signing up for a Photoshop class." Dad just had dental work done. It was pricey. Here's the bank info. I became the sole provider in a 4-person family, 2 adults working on and off, and one who gamed all day. 1 month, just as I was preparing to submit my mortgage application for my first home, Dad called. His voice was uneasy but firm. Odessa, we're in a bit of a bind with the bank. This house might get foreclosed if we can't come up with the money in the next few weeks. I went silent. That house, modest as it was where I grew up, where I once dreamed of having my own room, my own space, before that dream was replaced by a sofa bed in the living room so Blaine could temporarily move back in when he was 29. How much do you need? I asked, already knowing the answer would crush me. Around $980 a month, just for maybe a few months, just until your mother and I get back on our feet. And I agreed. The first transfer happened that very night, right after I canceled the deposit on the apartment I had been dreaming about for 2 years. I ended up sending that money, not for a few months, but for almost 2 years. 2 full years. Over $23,000 total. And that didn't include the other expenses, car insurance, roof repairs, or Blaine's birthday gifts. What made me the angriest wasn't even the money. It was how they acted like it was normal. No thank you. No one asked if I could afford it. No hesitation when they asked for more. I slowly became the family bank, with zero say in the very house I was keeping from foreclosure. Blaine still didn't have a job. When I finally asked him directly one Sunday, Mom just said, "He's trying to find his path. You shouldn't pressure him." Pressure? Me? The one working 60-hour weeks to cover his share of the rent he wasn't paying? And somehow, I was the one creating pressure? I started quietly documenting every payment, every date, every amount, like I was keeping a debt ledger for a client who would never repay. But I never intended to ask for it back, because deep down, I knew I would never see a dime. Every time I thought about cutting ties, another message would pop up. "Dad's back is acting up again. Can you order his meds?" "The roof's been leaking all week. No one has the money to fix it." And I would cave. Again. I would transfer the money. Again. I would put every personal goal on hold. Again. I started avoiding my banking app in the mornings because just seeing the balance made me feel like I couldn't breathe. My life was ruled by other people's bills, by the needs of people who never intended to stand on their own. I was living in a cramped rental with 2 roommates, eating instant noodles for a week straight so I could send $1,500 to fix a door in the house Blaine was using as his so-called inspiration studio. Then one day, standing in a convenience store near my office, I opened my wallet and realized I didn't have enough cash to buy a gallon of milk. That's when I truly felt it. I was being drained completely, drop by drop, month by month, year by year. I used to think being strong meant carrying all the weight, but in reality, I was just sinking into a swamp called hoping they would change. And the moment I realized that, I knew I had to change first. One of my clearest memories is a Sunday dinner about a year before I left. I had just worked a 12-hour Saturday shift, then spent my Sunday morning grocery shopping for the family. I bought salmon, fresh vegetables, pasta, olive oil, ingredients for a proper meal. I drove 40 minutes from my place in Midtown to their house in East Atlanta, hauled 4 bags of groceries inside, and started cooking. Blaine was on the couch. Same spot, same game, same headphones. Mom was watching TV in the living room. Dad was in the garage, tinkering with something he would never finish. No one said hello. No one offered to help. It was just expected. I was there, so I would handle it. I spent 2 hours cooking. When I finally called everyone to the table, Blaine pulled off his headphones and said, "I'm not really hungry. I had a big lunch." He'd eaten a bag of chips. Mom sat down and immediately started talking about Blaine's latest project, a logo design for a friend's startup that he'd been working on for 6 months. The friend had stopped asking about it 4 months ago, but Mom still brought it up like it was some groundbreaking achievement in progress. "He's so talented," she said, looking at me like I was supposed to agree. "He just needs the right opportunity." I didn't say anything. I just ate my salmon in silence. Dad, as always, chimed in with a story. "You know, when Blaine was in 5th grade, he won this art contest. The teacher said she'd never seen anything like it from a kid that age. I had heard that story at least 100 times. No one asked about my week. No one asked about my promotion, the one I'd gotten 3 months earlier that came with a $12,000 raise. I'd mentioned it once at dinner, and Mom's only response had been, "That's nice, honey. Can you pick up your father's prescription tomorrow?" That was my role. The person who showed up, paid for things, and then disappeared into the background. There was a coworker at my firm, David Thornton, 31, kind eyes, the type of guy who actually listened when you talked. He'd asked me out for coffee 3 times that year. I canceled every time. The first time I said, "I have a family thing." The second time, "My parents need help with something." The third time, he didn't even wait for my excuse. He just said, "It's okay, maybe another time." But I could see it in his face. He was starting to think I wasn't interested. The truth was, I didn't have time to be interested. My life wasn't mine. I had a best friend, Jasmine Reynolds. We'd been roommates for 2 years before I moved into the smaller place to save money, or rather, to send more money home. Jasmine was a lawyer, sharp as a blade, and she didn't take anyone's bullshit. One night, she found me in the kitchen at 2 a.m., eating ramen noodles for the 4th night in a row. "Dessa," she said, leaning against the counter. "Why are you living like a broke college student when you make $65,000 a year?" I stirred the noodles, avoiding her eyes. "I'm saving up for a trip." "Bullshit." I looked up. She crossed her arms. "I've known you for 4 years. You don't take trips. You don't buy anything for yourself. Every time I see you, you look more tired. So what's really going on?" I wanted to tell her. I wanted to say, "I'm supporting my entire family and I don't know how to stop." But instead, I just said, "I'm fine, Jazz. Really." She didn't believe me, but she didn't push. Not yet. 3 months before I left, something shifted. It was my 28th birthday. I woke up that morning feeling nothing. No excitement, no hope. Just the same dull weight I'd been carrying for years. I went to work, came home, stopped by the grocery store and bought myself a small cake, vanilla with buttercream frosting, my favorite. I drove to my parents' house because I thought, maybe this year will be different. Maybe they'll remember. I walked in with the cake in my hands. Mom was on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Dad was at the kitchen table, drinking coffee. Blaine was in his usual spot, controller in hand. "Hey," I said, setting the cake on the counter. Mom looked up. "Oh, hey, honey, what's that?" "It's my birthday cake." There was a pause, a long one. Then Mom's face shifted into something like embarrassment mixed with irritation. "Oh my God, was that today? I'm sorry, sweetheart. We've been so stressed with bills and everything, it just completely slipped my mind." Dad glanced over. "Happy birthday, Odessa." That was it. 2 words. Then he went back to his coffee. Blaine didn't even take off his headphones. I stood there holding a cake I'd bought for myself, realizing that I had spent 10 years waiting for people to see me, and they never would. I didn't say anything. I just put the cake in the fridge, walked out, and drove home. Later that night, I saw on Instagram that Blaine had gone out with friends. There were photos of him at a bar, laughing, holding a beer. The caption read, "Good vibes only." He couldn't wish me happy birthday, but he could post about his night out. 2 weeks later, I made a comment at dinner. Just a small one. "I'm barely keeping up with my own bills." It was the first time I'd ever said anything like that out loud. Thorin set down his fork and looked at me, not with concern, with something closer to annoyance. "You make good money, Odessa. Your mother and I are struggling every single day just to keep this roof over our heads. Doesn't that seem a little unfair to you?" I blinked. "Unfair?" "Yes. You have a stable job. You live alone. We're trying to take care of a whole household." I wanted to scream. I wanted to ask him if he realized that I had been paying for that household, that without me, the lights would have been shut off a dozen times, that the roof he was talking about would have been foreclosed 2 years ago. But I didn't. I just nodded and said, "Yeah, maybe." The third incident came a week after that. I mentioned, casually, over Sunday dinner, that I was thinking about saving up to buy my own place. Valeria looked at me like I'd just said something offensive. A girl buying a house on her own? She set down her glass of wine. Aren't you worried about what people will think? That no one wants to marry you? I stared at her. Why does that matter? She shrugged. I'm just saying, honey. It sends a message. I realized in that moment that it didn't matter what I did. I could work 100 hours a week, save every penny, sacrifice every dream, and I would still be reduced to this: a woman who should be worried about what strangers think instead of building a life for herself. That was the moment I knew. I would never be enough for them. Not because I wasn't trying, but because I was never the child they wanted to celebrate. It happened on a Sunday afternoon in late August. The air was thick and humid, and rain was starting to fall in soft, hesitant drops. I had just finished a long weekend shift, covering for a coworker who'd called in sick, and I was exhausted, but it was Sunday, and Sundays meant going to the house. It was routine, habit, obligation. I stopped at the grocery store, grabbed a few bags, salmon, vegetables, some frozen meals, and drove the 40 minutes to East Atlanta. When I walked into the kitchen, arms full of groceries, Mom was already there. Not to greet me, to confront me. Odessa, we need to talk. I set the bags down on the counter, my arms aching. Okay, what's up? She crossed her arms. Her voice was sharp, theatrical. What you've been sending every month, it's not enough anymore. I froze. Not enough? What are you talking about? Dad stepped in from the living room, his voice low and heavy, like he was delivering some kind of verdict. You make good money, Odessa. You live alone. Meanwhile, we're struggling every single day. Doesn't that seem unfair to you? I looked at the two people who raised me, who were now standing there trying to convince me that their comfort was my obligation. I held my voice steady. I've paid the mortgage for 2 years, not to mention utilities, medications, roof repairs, and it's still not enough? Blaine, sprawled on the couch as usual, chimed in without even looking up. It's not like you're lacking anything. What's wrong with sharing a little? I turned to look at him, my 32-year-old brother who had never paid a single bill in his life, who somehow felt entitled to comment on what sharing meant. Sharing goes both ways, Blaine, I said, my voice colder than the rain outside. All you ever do is take, Mom snapped. That's enough, Odessa. You're being disrespectful. I took a deep breath. My chest felt like it was about to explode. I'm disrespectful for telling the truth? Mom's lips pressed into that tight line I'd seen my whole life. The look she gave when she wanted to control everything through sheer indignation. If it's such a burden to you, she said, every word like a blade, then you can walk out that door and don't bother coming back. Time stopped. That sentence. If only she knew how many times it had echoed in my mind over the years. But this time, no one tried to stop me. No one called me the good daughter or the quiet one who sacrifices. They didn't pull me back. They just pushed me to the edge and waited to see if I would jump. I dropped the last grocery bag on the table, didn't even bother opening it, didn't put anything in the fridge like I usually would. All right, I said, soft as a breeze, sharp as steel. If that's how you feel, then I hear you loud and clear. I turned and walked toward the door. I'm leaving. My steps were heavy but certain. No one followed. No one called my name. Just Blaine, muttering something behind me. So dramatic. I walked out of that house empty-handed, hollow, but with my back straight. The rain soaked my hair, my clothes. But for the first time, I felt light. Like the weight I'd been carrying for years wasn't duty. It was chains. And they had finally fallen. I didn't drive straight back to my apartment that night. I couldn't. My hands were shaking too hard to grip the steering wheel properly. I pulled into a gas station about 10 minutes from the house, parked under the fluorescent lights, and just sat there. Rain drummed against the windshield. My clothes were soaked. I was cold, but I didn't feel it. I felt nothing. And somehow, that nothing felt better than everything I'd been carrying. I opened my contacts, stared at the 3 names that had ruled my life for a decade: Mom, Dad, Blaine. One by one, I pressed block. The finality of it hit me like a wave. No more emergency calls at midnight. No more guilt-laden text messages. No more just this once that turned into forever. I sat in that gas station parking lot for 20 minutes, watching the rain, and slowly felt something I hadn't felt in years: relief. At that moment, I didn't know what chaos would unfold when they realized their personal ATM had gone silent. But I knew one thing for certain: this time I wasn't coming back. Not out of pride, but because I had finally learned that kindness isn't infinite, and blind sacrifice only teaches people to expect you as default. My new apartment was on the third floor of an old building in Midtown. The paint was chipped, the hallways smelled like old wood and somebody's cooking from 3 doors down. But to me, it was paradise. No one woke me at 6 a.m. to schedule doctor's appointments. No one texted at midnight asking if I could front the gas bill. I no longer had to race across 3 counties with bags of groceries for dinners no one appreciated. I moved in with just 2 suitcases, an old comforter, and a desk lamp Jasmine had given me. But the space, the silence, felt like learning how to breathe again. Every morning, I woke up to my own alarm, made my own coffee, opened the window and let the light pour in. No TV blasting from another room. No mom's complaints about dad not listening. No dad's coughing fits that somehow became my problem when I got home late from work. I spent weekends reading. Actually reading. Not just skimming financial reports for work, but books I'd been wanting to read for years. I walked around Piedmont Park on Saturday mornings, where I didn't need to hold a phone to my ear for an hour listening to another emergency that somehow meant more money. I cut all financial ties: no transfers, no bill payments, no doctor's appointments, no groceries, nothing. My bank account, which had been perpetually hovering around $800, slowly began to stabilize. By the end of the first month, I had saved $900. By the end of the second month, $2,100. It was a simple thing, saving money from my own paycheck, but I'd never been able to do it before. Every dollar I earned had always belonged to someone else. Jasmine came over one evening with Thai food and a bottle of wine. "You look different," she said, studying my face as we sat on my tiny balcony. "Different how?" "Lighter, like somebody cut a rope you'd been carrying." I smiled. It was the first real smile I'd given in months. "That's exactly what it feels like." She raised her glass. "To cutting ropes. To cutting ropes." But even in that peace, in those quiet mornings and silent evenings, a small voice kept whispering in the back of my mind.
My name is
What if
Renata
they
Martinez,
really
and this is the
need
story of
you?
how I learned that
What if
sometimes the
something
people who gave
terrible
you life are the
happens and you're
same
not
ones who
there?
try to
I
erase it.
pushed it away. I had to. The silence lasted exactly 2 months and 19 days. Then, on a Tuesday morning in early November, my phone lit up with a text from Mom. I had unblocked them the week before, not because I wanted to talk, but because Jasmine, in her lawyer voice, had said, "Keep the lines open, document everything. You might need it." The text read, "Odessa, your father just got a warning letter from the bank. Something's wrong. Call me." I read it, set the phone down, didn't reply. I knew that "something's wrong" was never about health or safety. It was always about money. 2 days later, Dad called. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail. "Odessa, we need to have a serious talk. The house situation can't be put off any longer. Call me back." I deleted it. Then the calls started coming in waves. First, polite. "Hi, honey, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay." Then concerned. "Odessa, we're really worried about you. Please call us back." Then accusatory. "Are you really going to ignore your own parents?" By the third week, I had 47 missed calls and 32 unread text messages. Mom's messages became longer, more desperate. "Are you really going to abandon your parents like this? After everything we've done for you? You've changed. This isn't the daughter we raised." Blaine left a voicemail one afternoon. His voice was sharp, entitled. "Odessa, what do you think you're doing? Everyone's struggling here. You don't just get to walk away from your family 'cause life feels easier now. If Mom and Dad lose the house, that's going to be your fault. Think about that." I stood in my kitchen holding the phone, replaying that message 3 times. After all those years, after skipping meals so I could send them money, after canceling every personal plan, every dream, every chance at my own life. And what I got in return was blame. I picked up my phone and slowly typed out a message. "I've covered my part, and yours, for years. If things fall apart now, maybe it's time everyone asks who never did anything. I hovered over the send button. Then I deleted it because I knew no words would ever change how they saw me. To them, I was never a daughter, never a sister. I was a solution, and when the solution stopped working, all they had left was blame. I slipped the phone into my pocket and walked out into the golden autumn light, feeling just a little bit lighter with every step. But doubt has a way of creeping in through the cracks, especially late at night when the apartment is too quiet and your thoughts are too loud. I started having dreams. Not nightmares exactly, but unsettling scenarios where I would see Dad opening an eviction notice, or Mom crying at the kitchen table, or the house, my childhood home, sitting empty with a foreclosure sign out front. I would wake up in a cold sweat, heart pounding, that familiar guilt wrapping around my chest like a vice. What if they really can't survive without me? What if I'm being cruel? What if I'm the villain in this story? One evening, David asked me to coffee. Not as a date, just as friends, he'd said. I almost said no out of habit, but then I remembered. I didn't have to say no anymore. We met at a small cafe near Peachtree Street. He ordered a black coffee. I ordered a latte I actually had money to pay for. "You've been distracted lately," he said, not unkindly. I stirred my drink. "Is it that obvious?" "Only to people who pay attention." He smiled. "You want to talk about it?" I surprised myself by actually telling him. Not everything, just the broad strokes. Family expectations, financial strain, walking away. David listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "My parents pulled similar stuff with me." I looked up. "My dad was an alcoholic," he continued. "Functional mostly, but he'd get into binds. DUIs, gambling debts, you name it. And I'd bail him out, every single time. I thought I was helping, thought I was being a good son." "What changed?" My therapist asked me a question that I couldn't answer. He leaned forward. She said, "If you keep catching him every time he falls, when will he ever learn to stand?" I felt something crack open in my chest. "I had to let him hit rock bottom," David said quietly. "It was the hardest thing I've ever done. But you know what? He got sober. 5 years now, and our relationship is better than it's ever been." "But what if they don't recover?" I asked. "What if I let them fall and they just break?" David looked at me with those kind, steady eyes. "Odessa, the fact that you can help doesn't mean you must help. Sometimes the kindest thing you can do is let people face their own consequences." That weekend, Jasmine invited me over for wine night, something we used to do before my life became consumed by other people's emergencies. We sat on her balcony with a bottle of Pinot Grigio and a cheese board she'd put way too much effort into. "Okay," she said, pouring us both a generous glass. "Lawyer mode. I need to ask you something." "Go ahead." "If a client came to you, someone your age, same situation, what would you advise them to do?" I thought about it. I'd tell them to stop enabling the behavior, to set boundaries, to protect their own financial future. Jasmine raised an eyebrow. "So why are you making an exception for yourself?" I didn't have an answer. She leaned back in her chair. "My older sister did the same thing with our parents. Sent money every month for 15 years. Gave up her own dreams because they convinced her she owed them. You know what finally broke the cycle?" "What?" "She moved to California. Changed her number. Went completely no contact for 2 years." Jasmine took a sip of wine. "And you know what happened? Our parents figured it out. They got jobs. They downsized. They learned to live within their means. And now, 10 years later, they have a better relationship than they ever did when she was bankrolling them." I felt tears prick at the corners of my eyes. "Dessa, I need to ask you something else." Jasmine's voice got quieter. "Your mom was a nurse, right? And your dad was an engineer?" "Yeah." "And they both have pensions? Some kind of retirement savings?" I nodded slowly. "So why do they need so much help? 2 adults with professional careers shouldn't be on the verge of foreclosure unless something else is going on." A chill ran down my spine. I'd never thought about it that way. I'd just accepted their narrative. We're struggling. We need help. But Jasmine was right. Something didn't add up. Maybe I should look into it, I said quietly. Jasmine squeezed my hand. Maybe you should. It happened on a Thursday afternoon in early December. I was leaving a meeting when my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. Odessa, why haven't you paid the mortgage this month? The bank is pressing us now. I stopped dead in the middle of the hallway. I'd stopped sending money 4 months ago. 4 months. And he was texting me like it was just routine, like I'd simply forgotten to make a payment. But what really got under my skin was the phrasing, pressing us now, as if this were a new development, as if the problem had just started. My gut told me something was very, very wrong. That evening, I made myself a cup of tea, sat down at my kitchen table, and opened my laptop. I still had access to the bank account I used to send the mortgage payments to. It was technically a joint account Dad had set up years ago to make transfers easier. He'd never removed my access. I logged in and pulled up the transaction history for the past 2 years. There they were, every payment I'd sent. $980, transferred on the first of every month like clockwork, 24 months. $23,520 total. But then I scrolled down to see the actual mortgage payments made from that account to the bank. My heart nearly stopped. The last mortgage payment had been made 8 months ago. 8 months. I checked again, thinking I'd misread something. But no, there it was, clear as day. The last payment to First National Bank, April 15th. Nothing since. But I had continued sending money for 3 more months after that. 3 months. Almost $3,000. Where did it go? I pulled up my personal banking records and cross-referenced every transfer I'd made. The money had definitely been sent. They had definitely received it, but they hadn't used a single dollar for the mortgage. My hands started shaking. I kept digging. I clicked on the mortgage details and found something else that made my stomach drop. The actual monthly mortgage payment was $810, not $980, and $810. I stared at the screen, my mind racing. Thorin had told me the mortgage was $980 a month. He'd been collecting an extra $170 every single month for 2 years. 170 times 24 months equals $4,080, plus the $3,000 I'd sent after the last actual mortgage payment. Over $7,000. Misappropriated, lied about, stolen. I felt like I couldn't breathe. This wasn't just about them being irresponsible. This was calculated. This was fraud. The next morning, I called the bank. I kept my voice steady and professional, explaining that I was helping manage family payments and had concerns about the account status. After verifying my identity, the representative confirmed what I'd already discovered. The account is currently 8 months overdue. The outstanding balance is $6,480. The account has been moved to special collections. And when was the last payment made? April 15th of this year. Thank you, I said quietly, and hung up. I sat in my car in the parking lot of my office building, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. They had lied to me, not just once, not just a little. They had systematically manipulated me for years, and the worst part, I had believed them. I had trusted them. I had sacrificed my own future because I thought I was saving theirs. But they were never in danger. They just wanted my money. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with the light on, staring at the ceiling, replaying every conversation, every plea for help, every guilt trip. We'd be lost without you. You're the only one we can count on. Family takes care of family. It was all a script, a performance designed to keep the money flowing. I thought about all the nights I'd stayed late at the office, working extra hours to make up for the money I was sending home. I thought about the apartment I'd canceled, the vacation I'd never taken, the life I'd put on hold, and I thought about Blaine, lounging on that couch, controller in hand, while I ate instant noodles so he could have his creative space. Something hardened inside me. I picked up my phone and texted Jasmine. I need your help. I found something. She replied within 30 seconds. Come over. Now. Jasmine spread the documents across her dining room table like she was building a case, which, in a way, she was. Bank statements, transaction records, mortgage details. I'd printed everything. Holy shit, she whispered, scanning the pages. Odessa, this is fraud. You could press charges. I don't want to press charges, I said. I just want them to know that I know. Then we confront them. But you do it on your terms, with evidence, and you don't let them spin it. She looked at me with her sharp lawyer eyes. Are you ready for this? I took a deep breath. I'm ready. I sent a text to all three of them that night. I spoke with the bank. The mortgage is 8 months overdue. I kept sending money. Where did it go? For 15 minutes, nothing. Then my phone rang. Dad. I answered but didn't speak first. Odessa. His voice was nervous, caught. I can explain. I'm listening. It's complicated. Things have been falling apart. Dad. My voice was cold. Where did the money go? A long pause. We had other expenses. I sent $23,520 for a mortgage that costs $810 a month. You told me it was $980. That's over $4,000 you pocketed. And then you stopped paying the mortgage entirely while I kept sending money. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Where did it go? Silence. Then I heard Mom's voice in the background, and suddenly she was on the phone, yelling, How dare you accuse your father of— I have the bank statements, I said, my voice steady as steel. I have every transaction record. I know exactly what happened. Everything's been falling apart since you left. Since I left? I let out a bitter laugh. Or since I stopped paying. We're family, she screamed. Family helps each other. Help has a limit, Mom. You crossed it years ago. I heard Blaine's voice in the background. You're being selfish. They just need a little time. Selfish? My voice cracked. That's rich coming from you, Blaine. You haven't paid for a single thing in your life. Dad came back on the line. His voice was smaller now, defeated. We messed up. I know we did. But Odessa, you're all we have. We'll pay you back. I promise. How many times have you said that? If you don't help us, we're going to lose the house. And that's when I said the words I never thought I'd be able to say. Then lose it. Silence. That's not my responsibility anymore. Odessa, you can't. Can't what? Can't walk away after being pushed to my limit? I've carried this family for nearly 10 years while Blaine sat around doing nothing. And now, the moment I stop, I'm the heartless one? No, I'm done. Mom started crying, the same manipulative crying I'd heard 100 times. We're your parents, and I'm your daughter, but you never treated me like one. You treated me like a bank account. I hung up. My hands were shaking. My heart was pounding, but I felt free. I turned off my phone for 3 days after that call. Jasmine stayed with me the first night. We ordered pizza, watched bad reality TV, and didn't talk about it. She knew I just needed space. David sent me a text the next morning. I don't know what you're going through, but I'm here if you need me. I replied, Thank you. I might take you up on that. But even with the confrontation over, something still bothered me. $7,000. Where had it actually gone? 3 nights later, I did something I'm not proud of. I logged into Dad's credit card account. I still had the password from years ago when I'd helped him dispute a fraudulent charge. I pulled up his statements from the past 2 years, and there it was. Regular charges to a place called River's Edge Casino, $200 here, $500 there, sometimes weekly, sometimes twice a week. My father had a gambling problem. I scrolled back further. It had started 3 years ago, small amounts at first, then escalating. By 2 years ago, right around the time he'd claimed the mortgage crisis began, he was gambling thousands of dollars a month. The foreclosure threat was real. But it wasn't because they couldn't afford the mortgage. It was because Thorin had gambled away their savings. I kept scrolling. There were other charges too. Cash advances, payday loans, ATM withdrawals at the casino. And then I found something else. Multiple transfers to Blaine's account. Not the amounts I'd sent for his classes. Additional amounts. $200 here, $500 there. Over $6,000 in 2 years, sent directly from Dad to Blaine. I sat back in my chair, feeling like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. The mortgage crisis was never real. Thorin had manufactured it to cover his gambling debts and to funnel money to Blaine. And Valeria? I scrolled through her email next, found messages to Thorin about keeping Odessa in the dark, and we just need a few more months. She knew. She'd known the whole time. They hadn't just taken advantage of my generosity. They had orchestrated an elaborate lie to drain me dry. I printed everything. Bank statements, credit card records, email exchanges. I put it all in a folder labeled Evidence. Jasmine came over the next evening and reviewed every page. "This is criminal fraud," she said quietly. "You could take this to the police." "I don't want to send my father to jail," I said. "I just want them to face the truth." She nodded. "Then we do this the right way. We confront them with evidence, and we make sure they can never do this to you or anyone else again." I scheduled a meeting. Neutral location, a coffee shop near Emory University, public enough that no one could cause a scene. I told them to come alone, all 3 of them. When they walked in, they looked smaller somehow. Thorin's face was pale. Valeria's eyes were red-rimmed. Blaine looked annoyed, like this was an inconvenience. I was already sitting at a corner table, a manila folder in front of me. They sat down. No one spoke. I slid the folder across the table. "Before you say anything, look at this." Thorin opened it. His face went white. Inside were bank statements showing the actual mortgage amount, credit card statements showing casino charges, a timeline of every lie they'd told, itemized lists of every payment I'd made versus actual costs, email exchanges between Thorin and Valeria. "You have a gambling addiction," I said, my voice calm. "The mortgage was never in crisis until you gambled away the savings. You lied to get money from me to cover your debts. The mortgage is $810. You charged me $980. That's $4,000 you pocketed over 2 years, plus another $3,000 I sent after you stopped paying entirely." Thorin couldn't look at me. "You sent $6,000 to Blaine on top of what I was already sending him. And Mom," I turned to Valeria, "you knew, the whole time." Valeria's face crumpled, but she didn't deny it. "How dare you spy on your father?" she tried weakly. "How dare he lie to me for 2 years? How dare you help him do it?" Blaine leaned forward, angry. "So what? Family helps family through addiction." "Did anyone tell me it was addiction?" I asked. "Did anyone ask for help with recovery? Or did you just make me the ATM and hope I'd never find out?" Silence. Then Valeria broke. "I couldn't let people know," she whispered. "Thorin's family, your grandfather Raymond, they would have been so disappointed." And there it was, the truth beneath the truth. "So you sacrificed me instead?" "You were capable," she said, her voice rising. "You had money. Blaine needed support through his struggles, and we needed to keep the family together." "Why?" I asked, my voice breaking for the first time. "Why did Blaine always come first?" Valeria looked at me, and for the first time in my life, she was honest. "Because he needed us. You never did. You were always so independent, so capable. We knew you'd be fine." The words hit me like a physical blow. They had taken advantage of my strength. They had punished me for being self-sufficient. They had drained me because I was strong enough to survive it. I stood up. "You're right," I said quietly. "I am capable. Capable of walking away from people who only valued me as a resource." I put on my coat. "The house? Let it foreclose. The debts? They're yours. I'm done." "Odessa, wait." Thorin reached for my arm. I pulled away. "Don't touch me." Blaine chased me outside into the parking lot. "Odessa, wait." I turned. "What?" He stood there, for once looking uncertain. I'm sorry." It was the first time he'd ever apologized for anything, but I looked at him and said the words he needed to hear. "I don't think you are, Blaine. I think you're sorry the money stopped. There's a difference." I got in my car and drove away, leaving them standing in the parking lot of a coffee shop, holding a folder full of truths they'd spent years trying to hide. And for the first time in a decade, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. The week after the confrontation felt like standing in the eye of a storm. I didn't hear from any of them for 3 days. Then, on Sunday morning, I got a text from an unknown number. It was from Trish Walker, our old neighbor. Odessa, I don't know if you remember me, but I live next door to your parents. I wanted you to know, your father started going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings. I've seen him leave every Tuesday and Thursday evening. I thought you should know. Also, your mother is working again. I saw her in scrubs at the clinic on Ponce. Whatever happened, I hope you're okay. You were always the one holding that family together. Trish. I stared at the message for a long time. Thorin was getting help. Valeria was working. They were finally facing their own consequences. I didn't respond to Trish, but I saved her number. Something about knowing that someone had witnessed what I'd been through, that someone had seen the truth, made me feel less alone. 2 weeks later, I got a voicemail from Blaine. I almost deleted it without listening, but something made me press play. Odessa, it's me. I'm moving out. Getting my own place with someone I've been seeing. Her name's Blake. She's a nurse and she doesn't put up with my shit. He laughed, but it sounded hollow. I'm done being the golden child. Turns out it's exhausting being the favorite when you've never actually earned anything. Anyway, I just wanted you to know I'm trying. I don't expect you to care, but yeah, I'm trying. The message ended. I sat on my couch, phone in hand, feeling something I didn't expect. Hope. Not for reconciliation. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But hope that maybe, just maybe, something good could come from all this pain. News traveled through the extended family like wildfire. Aunt Susan called me one afternoon, her voice dripping with judgment. Odessa, how could you abandon your parents like this, in their time of need? I took a breath. Aunt Susan, did anyone ever ask why I had to support them for 10 years? Well, that's what family does. Did anyone ask why a 32-year-old man never paid a single bill? Did anyone wonder why 2 adults with professional careers couldn't keep their own house? Did anyone think it was strange that I was working 60-hour weeks while Blaine played video games? Silence. That's what I thought. I kept my voice calm. Everyone just assumed I should sacrifice myself, but no one thought to ask if that was fair. I didn't realize. No one did, because it was easier not to look. I hung up feeling lighter. For years, I'd been afraid of what people would think, but now I realized the people who mattered would understand, and the ones who didn't, their opinions had never mattered in the first place. 3 weeks after the coffee shop confrontation, there was a knock on my apartment door on a Saturday morning. I opened it to find Blaine standing there, looking more put together than I'd seen him in years. Clean-shaven, real clothes, not sweatpants, eyes clear. Can I come in? I hesitated, then stepped aside. He walked in slowly, taking in my small apartment. Nice place. What do you want, Blaine? He sat down on my couch without being invited, but something about his posture was different, less entitled, more humble. To apologize. Actually apologize, not just say the words. I crossed my arms, standing. I'm listening. I've been seeing Blake for 6 months. She's the one who made me realize I'm 32 years old, and I've never actually done anything. He looked down at his hands. She asked me one day, "What do you do all day?" And I realized I couldn't answer her, because the truth is, I do nothing. I've been doing nothing for a decade. Why are you telling me this? Because Blake said if I want a future with her, I need to face what I've done. To you, to Mom and Dad, to myself. He pulled out his phone and showed me a screenshot. I got a job, graphic design firm downtown. Entry level, $38,000 a year. It's not much, but it's mine. I start Monday. I felt something crack in my chest, just a little. I'm glad you're getting your life together, Blaine. I really am. But that doesn't erase... I know. He cut me off. I know it doesn't. And I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm just asking you to know that I see it now. What you did, what I took, what they took. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a sealed envelope, old, yellowed at the edges. I found this in Grandpa Raymond's old papers in the basement. It was hidden in a box of his things that Mom was supposed to go through after he died. He handed it to me. On the front, in Grandpa Ray's familiar handwriting, "For Odessa, to be opened on her 28th birthday or when she needs it most." My hands started shaking. Mom was the executor of his will, Blaine said quietly. She never told you about this. I found it hidden in the back of a filing cabinet. I looked at him. You could have kept this to yourself. I could have, but Blake said if I'm going to change, I have to start doing the right thing even when it's hard. He stood up. I'll leave you to read it. But Odessa? I meant what I said. I'm sorry. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to be someone worthy of being your brother. He walked to the door, then paused. He was right, you know. Grandpa Ray. He always told me, your sister's going to go far. Don't hold her back. I didn't listen. But I'm listening now. Then he left. I stood there holding the envelope, tears streaming down my face. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside was a letter in Grandpa Ray's handwriting and a legal document. My dearest Odessa, if you're reading this, I'm gone. I want you to know that I saw everything. How they leaned on you, how you carried them, how you sacrificed your own dreams to hold together a family that took you for granted. Your grandmother and I set aside $50,000 in a trust for you. It's yours when you turn 28 or when you need it most, whichever comes first. The account number and details are attached. Don't let them know. Use it for your dreams, not theirs. Yours. You've always been the strong one, Odessa, but strength shouldn't mean sacrifice. Strength should mean building a life that's truly yours. I'm proud of you. I've always been proud of you. I wish I'd told you more often. Go far, my girl. And don't look back. All my love. Grandpa Ray. I collapsed onto my couch, sobbing. He had known. All along, he had known what they were doing to me, and he'd tried to protect me, even from beyond the grave. The legal document showed a trust account at Georgia State Bank established 7 years ago with my name as the sole beneficiary upon reaching age 28 or upon request with proper identification. $50,000. I had turned 28 6 months ago. Right after I walked out, the timing felt like Grandpa Ray reaching through time to catch me. That evening, I called David. Hey, I said when he answered. Remember when you said you'd be there if I needed you? Of course. I could use a friend right now. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He showed up with Thai takeout and that steady, calm presence that made me feel like maybe everything would actually be okay. We sat on my balcony and I told him everything. The confrontation, the gambling, the lies, Blaine's visit, the letter from Grandpa Ray. David listened without interrupting, the way he always did. When I finished, he said, Your grandfather sounds like he was a remarkable man. He was the only one who saw me. I see you too, David said quietly. I looked at him. I've seen you from the moment we met, Odessa. Not what you could do for me or how you could help me. Just you. Something shifted in my chest. Something warm and terrifying and wonderful. I'm still figuring out who me is, I admitted. I've spent so long being what everyone needed that I don't know who I am when nobody needs anything. Then we'll figure it out together, he said. No pressure, no expectations, just two people getting to know each other. He reached across the table and took my hand. For the first time in 10 years, someone was offering me something without asking for anything in return. 2 days later, Jasmine called me into her office, her real office at the law firm downtown. Sit down, she said, all business. We're going to handle this the right way. She'd drafted a legal document, a settlement agreement. Your father and mother have 2 options, she explained. Option 1, they agree to a repayment plan for the misappropriated funds, $15,000 paid back at $250 per month over 5 years. That's less than they owe you, but it's enforceable. And option 2? They sign a legal document releasing you from any and all future financial obligations or expectations. No contact unless you initiate. If they violate the terms, the full amount becomes due immediately. What if they refuse both? Jasmine's smile was sharp. Then we pursue fraud charges, but I don't think it'll come to that. They know they're cornered. The meeting happened at Jasmine's law office the following week. Thorin and Valeria showed up with their own lawyer, a tired-looking man who clearly knew his clients didn't have a leg to stand on. Jasmine presented the options clearly and professionally. Their lawyer whispered to them for several minutes. Finally, Thorin spoke. "We'll do the repayment plan." "All of it?" I asked. $250 a month for 5 years? "Yes." His voice was small. "I'll pay back every penny." The papers were signed, notarized, filed. As they stood to leave, Valeria turned to me, tears streaming down her face. "I'm sorry, Odessa. I'm truly, deeply sorry. I was ashamed and desperate, and I hurt you. I hurt my own daughter." I looked at her for a long moment. "I know you are, but sorry doesn't erase 10 years. Thorin stepped forward. "I'm in treatment. Gamblers Anonymous 3 times a week. I haven't placed a bet in 6 weeks. I want to be better." "I hope you are," I said. "But that's your journey now, not mine." There was no heartwarming reunion, no hugs, no promises of holiday dinners, just a legal agreement and the understanding that some relationships don't heal. They just end, and that's okay. The next day, I went to Georgia State Bank with Grandpa Ray's letter and my identification. The trust officer, a kind woman named Patricia, smiled when she pulled up the account. "We've been trying to contact you," she said. "Per your grandfather's will, this trust became accessible when you turned 28. That was 6 months ago." "I didn't know it existed." She nodded knowingly. "Your grandfather suspected that might happen. That's why he left very specific instructions that if you didn't claim it by 29, we were to contact you directly at your work address." She handed me a printout. Trust balance, $54,337. The original $50,000 plus 4 years of compound interest. "There's also this," Patricia said, handing me another envelope. "He left it with us to give to you when you claimed the funds." Inside was a short note. "Odessa, if you're reading this at the bank instead of at home with your mother present, then I'm proud of you. It means you broke free. Use this for your dreams. The house is just wood and nails. You are the legacy I'm proud of. Grandpa Ray." I walked out of that bank and sat in my car for 20 minutes, crying and laughing at the same time. Then I called a realtor. 6 weeks later, I closed on a small 2-bedroom house in East Atlanta. Nothing fancy, a 1950s bungalow with hardwood floors and a front porch that needed painting, but it was mine. I used $30,000 for the down payment, put $20,000 in an emergency fund and investments, kept $4,337 for furniture, repairs, and one very overdue vacation. The day I got the keys, David helped me move in my few belongings. We stood in the empty living room, sunlight streaming through the windows, and he said, "It suits you." "What does?" "Having a space that's yours. You look at peace." And I realized he was right. For the first time in my adult life, I felt at peace. 1 year after walking out, I was sitting at my kitchen table, in my house, drinking coffee on a Saturday morning when an email notification popped up on my phone. From thorinking1967@gmail.com, subject, update. I almost deleted it, but something made me open it. "Dear Odessa, I'm 8 months sober from gambling. I haven't placed a bet since our meeting at the coffee shop. I attend GA meetings 3 times a week and I have a sponsor. Your mother is working full-time again at the clinic. We moved to a smaller apartment in Decatur. The house was foreclosed, but it's okay. It needed to happen. Blaine is thriving at his job. He got promoted to junior designer last month. He and Blake got engaged. They're talking about getting married next spring. He's become a man I'm proud of, and I think it's because he finally had to become one. Your mother and I are in therapy, together and separately. We're learning about codependency and enabling and how we failed you. The therapist asked us one day, 'When is the last time you told Odessa you were proud of her?' Neither of us could remember. That's when we knew how badly we'd failed. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even know if I deserve the chance to ask for it. but I want you to know that we're trying. I'm trying. The first payment of $250 was sent yesterday. I won't miss one. It's the least I can do. I'm proud of you, Odessa. I should have said it 1,000 times before. I'm saying it now. You were always the strongest one. I just wish I hadn't mistaken your strength for an obligation to carry us. Dad. I read the email 3 times. Then I set my phone down and stared out the window at my front yard where daffodils I'd planted 2 months ago were just starting to bloom. I didn't reply immediately. I needed time to process, to feel. 3 days later, I wrote back, Dad, I'm glad you're getting help. I mean that sincerely. I'm not ready for regular contact. Maybe one day. But not yet. I bought a house. I'm dating someone who sees me as a person, not a resource. I'm learning who I am when I'm not fixing everyone else's problems. It's harder than I expected, but it's worth it. Thank you for the payment. Thank you for respecting my boundaries. Maybe someday we can have coffee. When I'm ready. Odessa. I hit send and felt something release in my chest. Not forgiveness, not yet, but the beginning of something. Maybe closure, maybe understanding, maybe just the acknowledgement that people can change, even if that change comes too late to fix what was broken. 18 months after walking out of that house in the rain. I woke up in my own bed, in my own house, with sunlight streaming through curtains I'd chosen myself. David was in the kitchen making coffee. We'd been together for 6 months now, real together, not the tentative friendship we'd maintained for the first year. He'd stayed over 3 nights a week, but we were taking it slow, learning each other, building something real. Morning, he said, kissing my forehead as I shuffled in. Coffee's almost ready. You're perfect, I mumbled, still half asleep. I'm really not, but I'm working on it. That's what I loved about him. He was honest about his flaws. He didn't expect me to fix him. We were just 2 imperfect people choosing each other every day. My phone buzzed with a text from Jasmine. Brunch Sunday? I'm bringing my new girlfriend. I smiled and texted back. Can't wait to meet her. At work, I'd been promoted to Director of Financial Analysis. My salary was $95,000 a year. I had $28,000 in savings. My retirement account was fully funded. I was on track to pay off my mortgage in 15 years instead of 30. For the first time in my adult life, I was building wealth, real wealth, not just surviving paycheck to paycheck while everyone else spent my money. That afternoon, I got a card in the mail from Blaine and Blake, a wedding invitation. We're getting married. We'd love for you to be there. No pressure, just love. B and B. I held the invitation for a long time, then put it on my fridge. I didn't know if I'd go yet, but I didn't throw it away either. As the sun set, I stood on my front porch with a cup of tea, watching the neighborhood kids play basketball in the street. I thought about the girl I used to be, the one who believed that love meant sacrifice. That family meant obligation, that strength meant carrying everyone else's weight until you collapsed. I thought about Grandpa Ray and his letter. Strength shouldn't mean sacrifice. He was right. Real strength is knowing when to let go. Real love doesn't drain you. It fills you. Real family doesn't ask you to disappear so they can survive. I'd spent 10 years being invisible, being the solution to everyone else's problems. But I wasn't invisible anymore. I was Odessa King. I owned a home. I had a career I'd built myself. I had a man who loved me without needing me. I had a best friend who had my back. I had savings and security and, most importantly, peace. David came out onto the porch and wrapped his arms around me from behind. What are you thinking about? How far I've come. You should be proud. I am. And I meant it. For the first time in my life, I was proud of myself. Not for what I'd given others, but for what I'd built for me. The phone buzzed one more time. A text from a number I'd saved but rarely used. From Dad. Payment sent. Month 12. Still sober. Still trying. T. I read it and felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Just acknowledgement. They were on their journey. I was on mine. And maybe, someday, those paths would cross again in a healthier way. But if they didn't, that was okay too. Because I had finally learned the most important lesson of all. I was never the villain for choosing myself. I was never selfish for setting boundaries. I was never cruel for walking away from people who only valued me as a resource. I was just a woman who decided she deserved a life of her own. And that was enough. David squeezed my hand. Come on, dinner's getting cold. I took one last look at the sunset, then turned and walked inside, into my home, into my life, into my future. A future that finally, beautifully, belonged only to me.